Good day and welcome to SCO BRICS Insight. We look at what's really going on in the world of the BRICS. Now, my name's Rod Mackenzie, and today I want to talk about a new regulation that's before the Russian Parliament and who could have a huge impact on Western companies that left Russia and had buyback deals. It would appear that McDonald's might not be welcome back in Russia. Sorry, Ronald, but it looks like your time is up. Now, it seems that not all foreign companies that sold their shares for a nominal sum and signed a buyback deal will be able to return and take advantage of that agreement. This law has been introduced to the Duma, which is the lower house of the Russian parliament. It says a foreign company may be prohibited from repurchasing its shares in a Russian company if it significantly affects the social-economic development of the Russian Federation. Now, the State Duma Committee on Property, Land and Property Relations has submitted a proposal on foreign investments in the Russian Federation to the government for approval. Now, this is going to provide Russia with a legal foundation to decline the repurchase of shares in key companies sold by foreign companies who left the country, including in food production and trade. Now, there were a number of companies that entered into the options, and there were the options. I mean, let's look at it. The foreign investors who left the Russian Federation after entering into the option, as in a future repurchase of shares with domestic partners, are now going to find it more difficult to return to the country. It means that Russia is going to have the power to prohibit any deal to return the shares to a company if it's deemed to have a serious social impact on the economy or cause economic damage or harm to a Russian entity or the Russian people. Well, McDonald's burgers certainly fit into that category. Health for a start. Now, the State Duma Committee has prepared the amendments on foreign investments in the Russian Federation. Now, the decision regarding the implementation of this ban will be made by a department that regulates specific sectors of the economy. I mean, the bill's already been sent to the government for approval, and the cabinet response is being prepared by the Ministry of Economic Development. So we'll see how that goes. But it does look as like it's going to be taking place, and I think it might affect a number of companies, but particularly the McDonald's. Now, before I continue, I'd like to make an appeal. If you like and enjoy my videos, you can help me fund the channel and my website, scobricsinsight.com, to further develop it. You can do this by making a small donation, which you can do by clicking on the thanks button at the bottom of the video screen. Everybody who donates does get a personal thank you from me, and I'm thanking you all now. Do keep the comments coming, like, share, subscribe, and keep commenting. Now, the Ministry's press service has confirmed that the law is under consideration. The government's position will be presented reasonably quickly so that there's a level of clarity. Now, the Economic Development Ministry has also observed that the conditions of the return of foreign investors is complex and it necessitates a balanced approach. Now, the bill also provides for important details of the return of foreign companies. For instance, the new owner, who is currently Russian, has the right to make a unilateral decision not to exercise the option, as in, no, we're not selling it back to you. I mean, plus there's a possibility of a number of instances simultaneously in the event that the headquarters of a foreign organisation is situated in a state that engages in unfriendly actions towards the Russian Federation. Yes, somewhere like London, for example. Plus, if the company's shares were sold to the Russian side within the period from the 24th of February 2022 to the 1st of March 2025. So that's basically from the start of the special military operation in the Ukraine. Plus, it should be noted that the transaction will not be executed should the option price be lower than the current market price. So if they sold it for a ruble, they're not going to get it back for a ruble now, are they? Additionally, the transaction will not be executed if 2 or more years have elapsed since the option was concluded, and during which time the domestic owner has fulfilled and is fulfilling all his obligations to the employees, creditors and taxes to the state. Now, these amendments will be proposed at the second reading of the bill, which has already been submitted to the State Duma and passed its first reading. Now, the bill's author is a guy called Vladislav Reznik, who's a member of the State Duma Committee on Property, Land and Regulations. He says, now from February 22 to the present day, foreign companies have been conducting transactions that result in the transfer of the shares from foreign investors to Russian entities. Now, the leading sectors of the economy that was involved in include energy, gas, oil, trade, clothing, finance, transport and software, plus food, alcohol and beverages. That represents more than 15 different areas in total. And it's interesting to note that a significant proportion of them have concluded agreements on possible return to the country if the situation changed. I mean, for instance, in 2023, Denis Manturov, who was then Deputy Prime Minister and head of the Ministry of Trade, he said half of the foreign companies that sold their operations in Russia could return within 10 years. He said they were basically saying that they was just trying to satisfy what was going on. At the time, he stated that approximately half of the organisations that sold their businesses had the option in their agreement of sale to repurchase the assets within the period of 3 to 10 years. Now, in February 2024, he also reported that approximately 100 European companies out of 500 that were operating in Russia and 66 American companies out of 350 located in Russia had left the country. So not a huge amount, is it? Now, the most notable contracts for 1 ruble, for example, were the French Renault and the American McDonald's, and both exited the country in that manner. Now, it's understood that Renault was the first company to transfer its Russian assets with the right to buy out the stake back within 6 years. And according to reports in the media, a similar agreement was reached with McDonald's to Vyskno Tochka, which that translates into nice and tasty. But in the precise terms of this agreement have never actually been fully disclosed. So what are the alternatives there? I mean, the issue of foreign brands returning to Russia is going to be a major topic of issue. I mean, this is in the context of the warming relations with the United States and the initial interest expressed by foreign organisations in coming back to Russia, simply because the market's too big, and so the government's initiated discussions on what conditions to have on their return. Because I think it's important to note that foreign companies that have left the country often breach their obligations to Russia, not just to Russia, to the partners, to the creditors, to the employees, and ultimately to the consumer. I mean, you know, would you want to go back to McDonald's if it turns up, having left the country, and said, well, bugger you? Consequently, the officials from the Ministry of Finance are now developing the necessary strategies for restoring relations with Western companies that want to return. I mean, at present it's understood that the foreign businesses will require approval to return from the Cabinet of Ministers. That said, though, there's still a number of other issues that need to be addressed, including the potential for a foreign company to localise its production here and the possibility of them investing a fixed amount of hard cash in the domestic economy as a kind of deposit and act of goodwill. However, the necessity of immediate bans remains to be determined. As in all industries which foreigners have reduced their active participation, some of them can be considered socially significant, according to Gregory Ostapovich, who's the director of the Centre for Market Research at the Higher School of Economics. I mean, the situation is also complicated by that Russian legislation does not provide for such a concept as the buyback, so it's unclear which options are covered and which are at risk. I mean, initially it's evident that the areas like food, trade and industry either impact human well-being, he explains. So it's evident that when Western businesses look to try and resume operations in Russia, they're going to have to submit a detailed plan to the government. They can't just turn up and say, we're back. So this plan should outline the brand's strategic development prospects for the Russian market, the range of goods that the country is prepared to produce in the country and not just import, and the pricing strategy that's been devised. Now that'll allow the Russian government to assess what kind of competition the returning company will create for the domestic manufacturers who've spent a lot of time, effort on import substitution. I mean, after all, there's areas which they consider Western experience to be of great importance, such in areas as technology, but there's others which Russia has the capacity to manage independently. I mean, there's no problem with in the food production area. Russia's pretty active in that and it's done very, very well. I mean, in addition, participants can go that they may also arrive from a legal perspective. I mean, if this law is adopted, it's going to have to be retrospective, since the ban would apply to previously concluded agreements, according to Vladislav Kosakov, who's a managing partner of the legal group Novator. Now, it also should be noted that share buyback deals were concluded under specific conditions, and often foreign companies transferred their business to the Russian partners for 1 ruble, understanding they'd be able to buy them back, their assets, at the agreed price in the future. Good luck with that. I mean, would you sell something back for 1 ruble 3 years after working your ass off to develop it and make sure that it didn't disappear? I mean, this ban has created a situation that's obviously not clearly defined, because it's never happened before. I mean, whether these restrictions will prevent Western companies from reconsidering the terms of the deal and coming back. I mean, Dmitry Pashin, who's a lawyer at the Moscow Bar Association and a member of the partner at Clishin and Partners, he says the fundamental logic of the concluded contract is invalid. You can't just walk away having sold something for there and then walk back in the door and say, oh, by the way, now that we've decided to come back, you're going to have to sell it back to us, having done all the hard work for the last 3 years. So, I mean, the agreements have seriously been valued. I mean, foreign companies will be able to apply to the Constitutional Court for clarification on whether the law actually applies to the norms of the Civil Code, but the measures by the deputies sound to me like pretty reasonable. I mean, you cannot expect to walk back into a country and be able to take up where you left off having walked away, because there was an unacceptable way the exit of many foreign companies did from the Russian market. They basically just upped sticks and went. Yeah, they had a piece of paper that said, okay, you can have it for a ruble, and then off they went. But why should they be able to repurchase their businesses in 3 years, having the companies that have took over, the management and staff have worked hard? I mean, these companies are interested in the Russian domestic market because it's very lucrative. Russia's ranked 4th in the world in purchasing power parity. But these sanctions were intended to do serious harm to the country, and they support those sanctions by leaving the country. In this situation, it's imperative that Russia looks after its own interest, namely the protection of Russian producers in its domestic market against aggressive competition by those who went away and left the country in the lurch. I mean, there's examples going back in time of foreign enterprises developing actively and pushing domestic production out of the market. We saw that back in the 90s. So the current situation necessitates the implementation of protective measures for the market. I mean, these measures should be focused on the sectors of the economy that have been most significantly impacted by the country's economic development, import substitution, and that. So that's how we are. I mean, it looks like McDonald's will have lost out to Burger King in the market because the Burger King stayed and the Mackie D's win. So it doesn't look like you'll be seeing the Golden Arches any time in Moscow. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please like, share and subscribe. Also set the alert button so you get informed when I post a new video. And click on the thanks button at the bottom of the screen if you want to make a donation. See you all again soon. Thank you.